All right, looks like we're live. Hey, everybody, welcome to the fortnightly backdrop design and UX meeting where we get together and discuss visual aspects to the backdrop CMS content management web development system. My name is Luke McCormick. I'm coming to you from slightly overcast Martinez, California, which is near San Francisco. I do web project management and various other things like that. And let me welcome, we'll introduce each other. Why don't I throw it first to, who wants it? Jen?
Jen Lampton, joining from Oakland, California. I'm very excited about Backdrop 129 that just came out and looking towards our 10-year anniversary in January.
I'll jump in next. My name is Tim Erickson. I'm St. Paul Tim in Deerwood, Minnesota. Likewise, very excited about some of the UX features that we got into the last version of Backdrop, but I'm very excited about our 10th anniversary, our 10th birthday, 30th feature release coming up in January, and would like to talk about. If there's something special, we can get into that. Joseph?
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a developer from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'll probably be pretty quiet because there's a lot of people here right now.
Okay, Martin, you're the last one.
Hi, I'm Martin, backdrop developer in Northeast England, United Kingdom.
Okay. Well, so does anybody have any specific sort of design UX issues in the issue queue that they wanted to talk about? Going once, going twice. Okay. Well, my thought was then that we could start a discussion, and I would kind of like to publicize this and get more people involved about a brainstorm from a design UX if there's some things we could do for Backdrop 1.30. And one issue that came up was the issue of a core theme, and the short discussion around it. I mean, we've talked about this many times before. So, but in the most recent discussion, it was sort of brought up: would it be possible to get a new theme into 1.30? And there was some skepticism about that, and then there was some talk about, well, we might have to hire somebody to do it. And I think Wes stepped in and said that he thought it would be possible, but we would need a possible to get it in, and that he would be interested in doing work, but the big issue is a design. Jen, I know you stepped in and said we don't pay for core development, but I think we have had discussions before about paying for a designer. So
Yeah, not for core though. It was for Contrib.
okay.
And then if we got a good Contrib product, that could later become a core candidate.
Did the thing. We comp the properties.
I think that I think that we actually have had a lot of discussions about that, but Jen is always in a session opposite it at Backdrop Live.
That could be.
So she's never heard these discussions.
That could be. Well, okay. I'm sure she's still been a part of some. There's been so many of them. Well, so I wanted to introduce a couple of thoughts, which is, so first of all, I get the not paying sort of developers and the implementing it. I would be interested in pursuing whether or not we could pay for a theme or a design and treat that differently. But yes, I do remember, Jen, you talking about maybe we should do that for Contrib first. And to be honest, like well, I think Wes made a point about, like, we could probably get something to the experimental stage, and well, we don't really have experimental stuff. But if we had like a theme that we could launch in Contrib that was intended for core, and we launched it simultaneously. I'm thinking about how could we make something interesting happen by 1.30. Because I am skeptical that like we're going to start design, build, and and debug a new theme and launch it in 4 months. But I think there's a few ways around that. One of which would be maybe launching a contrib theme, which I think would be easier. I'll just throw out one or two other ideas. And another way of addressing, if we try to do something in core, and I do believe that the design part is the hardest part in terms of like we've actually got a lot of people that I think would be excited to work on contributing to the CSS, like building a core and theme. And I think it might actually be a great way to bring new contributors in, people that normally like don't know how they could help. But the problem is the design, right? And one of the things I did with this recipe that I've been working on was I used the theory that there's a ton of like WordPress themes and other open source themes for other projects out there that are all designed, and they, I guess they're open source, right? That includes the design. So that if we, and I don't know how people would feel about this for a core theme. Does it have to be a completely original theme? Or could it be that we went out and found something that, we liked from another project and then built out a version of it, and we could probably tweak it and make it a little bit our own. But that might, if we just had some, a group of people that did that and sort of picked the design, I think that would get us a long ways towards building something. And a third idea I have, which to make something happen would be, what if it wasn't a whole new theme, but it was just a refresh of basis using one of the tools that we've talked about before, like we had some supplemental CSS or something, so that we could have a very fresh sort of look of basis, but we're not building it from scratch. We're maybe changing the colors a bit, tweaking things, So either solve this problem about fixing basis and having it be backward compatible, and then, along with solving that. Or if we can't, like, some of the opposition to things like supplemental style sheets or supplemental CSS selectors have been like, well, if we're doing this all the time, we get a lot of cruft in core. Well, we could maybe get past that by saying, this is a one-time thing, right? We're not making a long-term decision. We're going to, for 1.30, add a CSS selector or add a supplemental style sheet and make it work. And we're not committed to doing this in the future. Maybe it's a test, but we're at least committed to doing it once, and then using that to allow us to just, have a fresh look at basis and I think we could. I mean, this last one, I think for sure we could do if we made the decision to do it time-wise, right? Because I think there's a number of little things that could be done to sort of make basis one work better. And also, it could be just a different default color, not just a different key vault, but it could be a default color scheme, a new, a new image in the background, the hero image. Like I could think of 4 or 5 little things that would have a pretty dramatic just effect on new users, and at least make it
Breadcrumbs, the
look
font,
right.
the hero image. Yeah, just add all the bug fixes.
Plus all the bug fixes,
Yeah.
even just tweaking things like the height of the header or something, right? The hero region. Like you just do a few things like that, and they would all be optional. So they wouldn't affect existing sites. A new site could either stick with the classic basis, or they could do the basis 2025. Anyways, so I just dumped out a bunch of ideas. Luke looks like he's patiently waiting. What do you think?
Yeah, I put the hang up because I've got a bunch of cans of worms to open, so I figured I'd give you a little warning there. First of all, politely dealing with that, I think like I'm basically in favor of everything you just said. I want to raise some larger things, but I don't want to make it sound like I'm against the thoughts there. I think actually WordPress's model is something worth noticing, in that the way they introduce a new theme each year, and
Он наверху. Герка, он пришел наверх.
You're not muted,
Irene is
Irene.
talking to someone else.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
It's all right.
Okay.
I pressed wrong buttons.
Yeah, but getting to the cans of worms. The second one, and it's going to throw it over to Joseph in a bit, but I don't want to put him on the spot until he's ready. But Joseph always has like all these interesting UI things, and I'd love to put that, and if there are any like similar things, into a strategy for, here's better theming. Here's like, not traditional what we're calling theming. It might even need a different word, but more like, visual site building with, low code, no code approaches. Which brings me back to sort of the biggest uh, can of worms, which is I'd like to, at some point, and maybe this is a good time, look into the idea of revisiting some of the user interface decisions that Drupal made years ago. And Jen, I know you're a veteran of all these wars, and so you probably get PTSD when like, oh no, not that again. We already decided that. uh, but just I feel like there's things that we do for historical reasons, that we QWERTY keyboard ourselves, of like, doing things that they were because the current crowd that learned this stuff now knows it and doesn't want to give it up. But if you just look like at our menus, that stuff that we've inherited from Drupal, where the places where you go to do various activities is like randomly scattered in a totally unpredictable and irrational place. And it doesn't, it's the kind of thing that if you make any kind of little incremental changes, you just make it worse because you don't fix the problem, and you just add more things to try to learn. And when you change the name of the modules menu to functionality and don't make any other changes, that just makes it harder. Um, but if you could somehow reduce the number of menus in half and make it so that, your system administration stuff is all in the same spot, so you don't have to, you know, go down 5 different paths to get to things, there might be some value in that. Anyway, those are my cans of worms.
I don't think any of that is related to what we're talking about. Like
Yeah,
we're
that's my
talking about a
problem.
new theme, right? Yeah. Valid concerns though, Luke, and we do have an issue about menu items in particular because
Wait,
it
we
is
do?
something that like we tried a little bit in Backdrop 1. We've moved random things around from place to place. Some of those decisions we thought were right at the time, and in hindsight maybe weren't. But yeah, the biggest thing, I just want to throw this out there, Backdrop's like #1 philosophy point is that there's a cost that comes with change. And
Yes.
so every time you change something, you need to
Mhm.
evaluate the cost, and like reorganize the whole menu is probably something that's like a complete non-starter because the cost of learning that is so high that it would remove more benefit than it would add. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, like if you wanted to take this structure we have now and be like, oh, we're combining these two things or we're combining these three things, like that's something people could get on board with, but just like throw the whole thing out the window and start over is like really hard. So
Not what I said.
yes, well, I don't know. There, it could be interpreted that way. So I just wanted to like throw that out and be like, but
Fair
there's an
enough.
issue for that if you want to work on that. I do
What's
think
the issue?
though, the theme stuff is really interesting because the WordPress model is really great. Like having a new option every year in core is fantastic. They are very well funded. They have a team of like, developers that works on this all the time. They have a team of designers that works on this all the time. They're a lot more
Mhm.
capable of delivering things on that kind of scale. We have talked about putting a new theme in for Backdrop 2. I think that's realistic for us. I think putting a new theme in 3 months is not realistic for us. I do think getting started on a new theme in 3 months is realistic for us. I think we could do that in Kintrib, and if we can do it in Kintrib, we can fund it. So I think there's like a lot of attractiveness to that, especially if we can pitch in January, like, hey, new theme coming in Backdrop 2, available today. I still think that could be kind of exciting for a 10-year anniversary announcement. Another thing I wanted to throw out, and I mentioned this in Zulip, but then I didn't stick around late last night to see the answers through at like 11 p.m. or something, is that we could also do like a very least homepage rebrand for backdropcms.org, but maybe a more serious theme update for backdropcms.org. And that is something we can actively fund much more easily than the development space. So it could be some combination of, we have a theme coming, we also have a new splash page to announce 10-year anniversary, check out our new theme. Maybe there's some cohesion there, like if the homepage of the site vaguely matched what the new theme homepage might look like, that could be a good tie-in there, and we could maybe use funding for one place to help another. I don't know how that might work, but I do think that there are some ways we can kind of make this work to our advantage. So yeah, in general, new themes, good. How to do it,
Right.
don't know.
I will say in terms of like Luke's opening new cans of worms, I think we were talking about themes, but themes were in the context of like, what can we do for a big release, right? And it doesn't have to be a theme, right? It could be something completely different. Themes were just like the first thing as people started to talk about like, what could we do special for 1.30? Themes came up, but there might be other things, and maybe it's, I just like deadlines, there's nothing magic about 1.30, right? But just like deadlines motivate some of us to like really put some time in the last few weeks of a release cycle and get things done. A 1.30 release can motivate, if we use it, can motivate us to sort of collaborate and get some bigger things done than we normally would. And that's what I'm thinking about, and what should those things be? So
I can tie it back to that because Tim, we started out talking about recipes.
Yep.
Recipes can affect all sorts of config things, right? Couldn't a recipe potentially like wreak havoc on move everything around? Like, isn't that like a recipeable thing?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, in the sense that recipes are nothing more than modules right now, and modules can do that. So,
All right.
so the answer is yes, a recipe can do anything you want it to do, but that's not really a new thing in itself. I do think that the area of recipes is something else that we might, like adding that as a project type to 1.30, that could be a big thing, a big marketable thing. But
Adding
we'd have to
recipes
figure out,
as a project type?
yeah, but we'd have to figure out what that means, and we'd have to build tools for it. It's not a trivial thing.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I still I am fully convinced at this point that adding layouts as a project type was a massive mistake. And at this point, I think adding project types is a huge mistake.
Okay.
From a technical perspective.
Joseph, can you repeat again? I'm sorry, it's a little noisy here. What did you say about adding layouts?
Making them a project type from the system module perspective was a mistake.
Why?
The system overall is good, but I think the technical implications of making them require their own folder in the I think massively limits our ability to distribute them.
Sure.
Where would you want to see layouts?
Can I suggest that we not go debating whether or not this is a good idea, and focus right now more on the purpose of this discussion right now is what might we do as sort of a big 1.30 thing, that we could go down rabbit holes with any one of these, deciding whether or not that is the thing. But more so I threw out recipes as an idea, but I'm not actually advocating for that yet. So as like the feature in 1.30, do people have other ideas for?
I think recipes is interesting because the way it works now, like Joseph, I don't think we'd be introducing that kind of technical challenge because it is just a module. This is like a sort of a branding marketing thing where we could be like, you can now have recipes. And like to us, it's just a module. But if we had something feature style, where like features is just a module too, right? But there was just a different interface where you could manage those in a way that you manage your different modules. We can do that same thing with recipes and Backdrop, where it's not
Mhm.
really a technical challenge in so much it is like a mind shift into like, oh, people think about these differently
But
than they think about other modules.
I agree with you, but every time this comes up, people say we should add it as a new project type.
Yeah, I don't know that that's has to be the same. Like we could have a type equals module or type equals feature be the same internally, like just
I,
because it has a new name.
and I did say add it as a project type,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be that. I could make an argument for it, but I don't want to have that discussion right now. Like the really the meta point that I was making is that some big step forward with recipes
Mhm.
could be a really good thing. Whether it's making them a project type or it's something else, could be yet to be determined.
I could throw out one of the rare useful things I got from getting an MBA, which is that one of the things that would come up in sort of entrepreneurial things is creating something called an ID sieve, which is basically what we're doing here, where you throw out just a whole bunch, like 100
Mhm.
possible things to do, and then you filter them through like, okay,
Mhm.
is practical, is it legal, like you just and you reduce them down until you get to like a manageable number of things, and doing stuff like this, is it technically consistent, what would be like a thing. And but you start out with not rejecting anything,
Yeah.
adding things to the pile, and
Yeah.
then later on you'll thin them out.
So specifically, and Irina has asked that we talk about like bad camp and stuff. And I'm going to say another 5 minutes, and then we can switch to that. Is there anything else sort of big design UX that could be a real feature? It could all, we can do a big thing or a couple of small things is all another way to go, right? Is that we just try to package a bunch of small things. I'll just say in terms of how we're thinking about this, another distinction would be there is our 10th anniversary and there's the 1.30 release. So like the 1.30 release is very specific and our 10th birthday is very specific.
Oh, 11th birthday. It's our 10th anniversary.
Yeah.
Gotta get that right.
Well, no, I
All
mean
right.
your first birthday is when you're 1 year old, right? Is your first anniversary. So
Our first,
I grappled a little bit with this too.
yeah, I don't know. And now I'm confused. I think there's definitely because we already had our 10th birthday,
Oh, did we?
but was
Did we
that
talk
based
about?
on
That was the beginning of the 10th year.
Fork Day? Though maybe that's when our birthday was. And like our
Oh,
first birthday
maybe.
is 2 years after Fork Day. I don't. Sorry.
Anyways, to not get, but I hear that. It's also like our 31st release, right? But it's no, if you count the initial, if you
Yeah.
count 1.0.0, it's our 31st release. But that's why I think if we define it, the 30th feature release, right? Like adding features.
Yeah.
Uh,
Were you getting to the point though, Tim, that we could do 10 things or 30 things? Or is it the numbers they were
Oh.
excited about?
No, I was just getting. I was getting wrong. We don't have to do one big thing. We could do a number of small things. It could
30
be 30.
things.
It could be 30 things. It could be 30 small things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's, and that's not inconceivable when you think about all the little things that are out there.
I had an idea.
yeah.
Automatic updates is something that people are excited about. And we've had that be like almost done for like 3 years. I feel like that could be something that could be really big announcement and maybe not a lot of work for us to do in the next 3 months.
Yep.
So anyway.
I think actually, right, I don't know if like we all know this to our heart, but I don't think anyone's mentioned it yet at this meeting, is the next release will be the first after Drupal 7 is actually end of life. And Irina knows all about this. So I mean that's kind of a big deal. It's been like this sort of, that asteroid's getting closer and closer, but this is the asteroid's finally hit. So,
what I was getting at before was maybe there's a way to think about like a year-long celebration. What I was trying to get at is if we wanted to do something big like a new theme and there's no way we can get it done by January 15th, we could say, oh, well, this is a goal for our 10th year. We're going to do this one big thing. And that kind of gives us a whole nother year. But the truth is, I don't really like that idea. I'm just throwing it out.
Oh no, I like it because all you have to do is start it. Then you don't have to actually have it done
Right.
by then. So that's pretty
Well, I
good.
like that part, but what I dislike is that we need what I'm trying to do is set a goal, right? A
Yeah.
very focused goal. And sort of saying we've got another year to do it. My fear is it ends up falling flat. I'd rather focus on the 30th release. So, well, we should jump to some other topics, but does anybody have, what I'm going to suggest, if I still think there's a little momentum around this theme idea, is that we have a meeting that we pre-announced so that we can get folks like Wes and hopefully Greg there that care a lot about this, where we talk specifically about the 30th release and maybe like a strategy for doing something around themes and decide, is it a contrib theme? Is it a light refresh of a basis? You know, is it that we finally introduce fixes to basis, like that we solve that problem? That's a doable thing. So, and we don't have a lot of time. So if we're going to do this, I would suggest that 2 weeks from now at our, although Backdrop Live is coming up. But 2 weeks from now, if that's not Backdrop, well, no, it's got to be more than that to Backdrop Live. That we have a meeting where we specifically talk about like what can we get into 1.30. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and so think about this theme thing. You know, don't think about it narrowly as like we have to do an entire new theme in core, right? Think about it broader, like what can we get done and how do we do it? Again, I think we underestimate there's definitely people who would love to contribute to a theme that aren't active in the core issue queue just because, you know, of theming's their skill, not back-end stuff. So switching to Irina, you wanted to talk, I think, specifically about Badcamp, and maybe we could talk about Backdrop Live too, if there's time.
Yes, we have a month before Badcamp, and we hope to have a Badcamp summit. And I would like to invite those who can come to Auckland to participate in this Backdrop summit. I hope that people who live close to Auckland will definitely be there.
Is there going to be remote attendance options?
Yes, I think that for the Backdrop summit, I would like to have Zoom or whatever is remote opportunity for people to join because lots of people can't come. But I will very much appreciate, I would like to invite as many people to come in person.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if Nate will be coming?
I don't think either of us are going because there's no COVID policy. So we don't know if it's safe.
We could
Well-
probably fix that. What do you need in a COVID policy? I'll
Anything
I,
would be good.
Irene and
As
I
of
will
now,
bring it up in
Bad
3
Camp
hours.
doesn't
in the
care if you
meeting.
live or die. So anything would be improvement.
Can I answer this?
Okay.
COVID policy has been discussed a week ago on Thursday. It will be discussed again. There are, since you mentioned that 2022 COVID policy was acceptable, people are looking into that. The question is, even if there is a COVID policy, we don't have a way to enforce it. So even though COVID policy is stated clearly on the front page of the site, it doesn't mean that people will respect that. So that is very personal decision, but it impacts how we plan Backdrop Summit. I think that having Backdrop Summit at Badcamp is a pretty highly visible event. We have lots of different people talking at Badcamp on various topics. They're talking about AI, they're talking about open source. This is not just technology, pure technology event. And I will I started a document which is pretty blank right now, which is called Backdrop Summit 2004. And if people have suggestions of what they would like to see there, or how they would want to participate, or what should be included, I hope to put something together by next Thursday.
Is there a date for this yet?
Yes, the date is October 25.
Yes.
So Friday?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what if there were COVID policies for the individual summits?
The,
Like if the summit leaders, I mean, the summit leaders have pretty broad powers to, define things.
I think Luke's suggesting that we define a policy for ourselves during the backdrop summit.
I
That's
think that's
possible.
I think it's a possible thing.
It could also be that whatever bad camps policy is fine, and we
Yep.
just have someone at the front desk enforcing it. It would be different if there is a desk. You could put a desk or something. So
Do
So
you
regardless,
Mhm.
I think that people will be making decision about participation last minute. We are all humans. We don't know what could happen tomorrow. So I think today I would like, my kind of main thing is to invite people to contribute topics that they would like to see at the Backdrop Summit. If Summit is not
I think
a
you haven't,
series of sessions, it's also a series of conversations. So what I would like to do, I would like next Thursday to have outline of like, these are things that we would like to talk about. Like why use what are the benefits of Backdrop, or like how you use layout. This is a technical part. This is how we're helping. This is how higher ed is using it. We are releasing the Cantor theme that can be used not only for Stanford, but also for other sites. We made big changes and we're planning to use it for many other sites as an open source. Like what are benefits of forking open source projects? So there's a lot of different things that can be at the summit. And at this point, my hope is to invite people to bring the topics, decide what they want to talk about. And then, so when I'm sending invitations to people in higher ed or students or nonprofits or whoever wants to use, we'll actually start planning and advertising this thing. So that's if you need access, please. Actually, I'm going to set it right now as.
And this looks like it's a 3-hour summit. So
Yes.
There's a million ideas. Do you want like options will be suitable for like 15-minute sessions or an hour or both, or what do you, everything?
I think that I think that at this time everything is a great option.
Okay.
Because I think that brainstorming comes first, and then so we first add things, and then we say, well, this is what we can do, and this is what we can't do. And Luke, thank you for posting the policy. It has been discussed last Thursday. Maybe it will be discussed again. There was discussion last Thursday.
I know we just didn't decide anything. Like we brought it up, but I would think actually I mean I don't know if we want to get into it now, but I would think something along the line of please don't come if you're infected. I think if we try to enforce like a mask policy, that's gonna be a uphill climb. But it's reasonable, and I do this actually every time I work. I'm working for University of California in a gig right now, and I sign something. I fill out a form that says I do not have any symptoms,
Mhm.
and I mean that seems like something that would be sort of reasonable,
Um,
if that would help.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna probably be there, so I don't want to get into the policy. I think you guys should talk about it at the next bad camp meeting and,
Which is tonight.
okay.
It's in 3
Um,
hours.
I, so I have, I mean, it would be helpful to at least come up with a framework, Irene, on how to think about this summit. Like, when I think about a DrupalCon summit, I think a little bit like, oh, doing kind of an unconference or something like that. But that where we're gonna shape and find out what people want to talk about in the room, and a bunch of things that just aren't practical at this summit, right? One, we're gonna have, I think the most we've ever had at an event like this is say around 10 people, and maybe you incorporate some people remotely, but that is difficult. Also, a lot of so if you've only got 10 people in the room, only a few of them are going to be really prepared to present. So, I mean, it feels to me more like a mini camp than a summit, which I don't care about the definitions, but I only make the definition because I think of that as being more structured. So ultimately, I think that's probably where we're coming down, isn't it? It's just sort of a structured 3 hour sort of,
Yep.
So I would propose it, that there should be something that's like the state of backdrop. It would be great if we had a big update, where is backdrop come to, and maybe it's a chance to preview our roadmap for our 10th anniversary. And then, maybe it's also so hard because you don't know, is everybody there going to be are we addressing beginners? Or anyways, because it's only 3 hours and because I want breadth, some sort of like a lightning talk, thing would be good, where if we had a series of shorter presentations, and maybe that's where we bring in the community in a Zoom, with Zoom, so that, like folks like, we did 6 10-minute presentations over the course of an hour, and allowed folks in Zoom to contribute. These are just thrown out ideas.
Tim, I have something that you will allow you to actually crystallize your ideas, I bet, because it references what we were talking about before thing at the very beginning. Is you were frustrated that this, last week at Starshot discussions that seem to be leaving out these important backdrop things. Well, guess what? Here's your chance, and specifically, there's a Starshot summit at Bat Camp that I'm running the afternoon before. So both ahead of time and actually in practicality, this sort of provides an opportunity to answer that, to be like, and it's going to be a room full of like Starshotty people, right? So in that context, it's like, oh, hey, speaking of Starshot, you do these ideas appeal to you? Well, guess what? Look what we got here.
I mean, this is where the size of the group and stuff falls in. Because, so, for example, I would love to have a discussion about backdrop and Starshot, right, as part of a summit. But I don't know that the audience is there for that, right? I think that, like oftentimes at these events, we get a handful of beginners that really that's more above where they're at. They want to talk about what is backdrop and how do I use it.
No, well, I can tell you actually, having been to all the previous backdrop summits at Bad Camps, and having been to the room where this is taking place, this will have a lot of mix in with the other things. They're fairly big rooms, and they're all central. So and there's not a lot of other stuff competing with it. So unlike past Bad Camps where you had to walk to a distant hotel and find a room in a basement in order to find the thing. This is going to be in your face. This is going to be like right out there. So it'll, like, particularly if we market it as, if you're backdrop curious, this is the place to go. I think a session topic talk, whatever, of like star shot and backdrop. You know, what qualities do they share? That's like a presentation that writes itself. We lost Irina.
Uh-oh. I wonder if she had a hard stop or something at Fort.
She didn't
I'm interested
say
in that topic. I'm just not sure if we'll have. I hear your point though, Luke. That maybe if we advertise it, we could get the audience there for it.
Oh, she did drop.
Yeah,
She had a
she's
cut
still
off.
in the Google Doc. I actually have to go too. I've got a security team meeting.
Sure.
But Tim, thank you for
Yeah.
this discussion. Luke, thank you for your continued ideas. Joseph, thank you for everything. We'll see you guys later.
Jen, thank you.
So, Luke, your summit is after the backdrop summit. I'm looking
No,
at
it's
the
before.
schedule. I'm looking at the schedule right now, and Friday the 25th from 9 to 12 is the backdrop summit, and from 12:55 to 3, which is only 2 hours. These are only 2-hour summits. It's 9 to 11 and 1 to 3 basically. Okay. Well, I think that narrows it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if it's only 2 hours, I would suggest something like breaking it into like 3 sections where it's like an intro. Here's where backdrop is at. Recent news and updates. There could be then sort of a featured discussion, which could talk about like backdrop and Star Shop, and then there could be like a lightning talk session.
They're 3 hours. The labeling is complicated, but the backdrop is 9 to noon, and then
I see that. The 11:05 is the start time of the third block.
and then the
Got it.
afternoons are 1 to 4.
Got it. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. Well, that's a little bit more time.
Yeah, but you're right. It is after. Sorry. Although that also works. Things that can.
Yeah, and it does say in the block 9 to 12. I'm sorry, that was my mistake.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can't make any more decisions here, but I don't think there's any way I'm going to get to Bad Camp this year. So, and I don't like to push a remote option because I know how hard that is to make it work.
Yeah.
Although I think like one way to make it work would be to say, first of all, we've got to have somebody in the room that's willing to be, I don't know the Bad Camp is going to provide to stream the meeting out, right? It's one thing to have people Zoom in and present. It's another thing to be streaming it out to an audience. And I don't think Bad Camp would do that for us. So we'd have to have somebody to do that. And that would be great if it were streamed. But the other option is just to allow folks to Zoom in and present, especially for like the lightning talks, because I don't think you can do lightning talks with just the people in the room unless you get a commitment that there's going to be enough people there quickly.
I'll tell you for the Starshot Summit that I'm running, I'm going to try like hell to get as much remote activity because there are all sorts of interesting people that are not going to be in Oakland, and I will want to incorporate them in any way that I can.
Right.
So I'll bring this up in tonight's meeting, which, as I said, happens in a little while, and push to have that kind of involvement, particularly on like the presentation side,
Right.
to make it so that I mean we've rejected the idea, I think totally rationally, of having any fully remote presentations. We don't want to get like a room full of people watching a TV. But if there's people on stage
Right.
who are willing to, make sure that the remote stuff gets incorporated, I think that's totally a doable thing. And in fact, it could be a really fun thing.
Yeah, you could have a host that's on stage who's sort of managing the Zoom, and then you could have some Zoom participants. I mean, you could also do a panel discussion with some offsite Zoom people. But I think the focus should be on having the offsite people presenting to the local group and not trying to sort of like have remote people watching somebody present locally.
Right.
That's harder to do.
No, but plus we're trying to avoid that just because we want to make sure we get the numbers up, and there's a general feeling among the group that's that's in competition. It's not so much mine, but the other there's definitely people that they're like no remote at all. But I think an advantage of remote things is that it can actually help to solidify meetings. You get good notes, right? You get a record of the thing that happens. You can sort of make decisions and somebody remembers them because there's a recording of it.
Yep.
There's transcripts.
Okay. Backdrop Live is the 10th and the 11th, even before Bad Camp, and we haven't done anything. I'm going to have to dive onto that. Okay. We're still recording our meeting.
Yeah. Do you want to edit that, or can you? It's
I mean, it's not that it's just a waste of people's time.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, we're about to end the live stream. Bye, everybody.